What's up everyone, welcome to the Bike City Woodworks channel. My name is Brian and today we're going to make mini shoji lanterns with Kumiko panels. So let's get started. These mini lanterns are inspired by Japanese Andon lanterns, which are wood and paper lamps for indoor use. I've decided to add some Kumiko to mine, but Andon could be anywhere from basic to complex. I like the challenge of creating something restrained yet detailed like this. So far I've just been dimensioning my material at the jointer and planer. You'll notice I'm also milling some cherry. I like to make a couple of lanterns at the same time. And since they require so little material, I can use offcuts from other projects to make them. The next step is to separate the legs. I set the table saw fence to the thickness of the material and rip enough for 4 legs for each lamp. Then I plane the remaining material to 1/2 inch for the stretchers. Set the fence to the new thickness and rip enough for 8 stretchers per lamp. Once I have my leg and stretcher strips, I can chop them to length at the miter saw. Now's probably a good time to talk about how these lanterns go together. They join in what I'm calling a triple lap, although I'm not sure if it's actually called that. You can see here the leg has laps on adjacent faces, and the stretchers have a traditional cross lap that allows them to join at a 90-degree angle. I'm going to show you how I cut these joints at the table saw using a sled. Starting with the leg laps, I set up some stop blocks to determine the width of my lap. I'm setting the final width to a hair less than the thickness of the stretcher, and then I'll cut the laps. Next, I cut the stretcher cross laps in the same way, setting the width of the final lap to a hair less than the thickness of the stretcher. Since I sized the laps just smaller than the stretchers I cut, I need to do a bit of sanding for fitment. I just use a sheet of 220 grit sandpaper so I don't go too fast. Note here that I'm just sanding the sides of the stretchers right now so that they can connect. I'm not sanding the tops or bottoms yet. Once I have a good fit, I'll chamfer the edges of all of the parts for a smooth and polished feel. Gluing up the stretchers into horizontal frames. And finish sanding the horizontal frames and the legs for that final fit and finish. Now I can glue the stretcher frames to the legs to form the lantern frame. And on to finishing. After a magic trick, I can get to work applying 3 coats of armor seal, sanding with 400 grit between each coat. Now I'm measuring for the Kumiko panels and designing my pattern. Here are the measurements if you're interested. I cut the Kumiko using my custom sled and glue the panel frames together. If you're interested in more information on how I make Kumiko, I have links in the description and the cards to another video showing in more depth how I do that. Once the frames are glued together, I can work on the infill pieces, which is a pretty repetitive process. After a bit of final sanding to level the panels out, I install the paper backing. I'm using acid-free double-sided tape that I got at the art supply store for this. I'm not sure if you actually need acid-free tape, but I just asked them what they recommend using with the handmade paper I also got from them. Once I've taped up the panels, I can attach the paper, cut away the excess, and install the panels back into the lantern. If you want, you can also add a top panel, but you don't need to. So that's all there is to these mini Kumiko lanterns. If you're interested, I have a free plan on my website for these. The link is in the description. And if you like this video, please give a thumbs up so YouTube knows it's worth sharing with others. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.